Hello, this is Anthony. Let's walk and talk. So, today we're going to talk about manipulation, disinformation, power control, all the things that you've heard about, learned about, experienced in the last, let's just say 6-8 years. However, this hasn't been going on for 6-8 years. This has been going on since the existence of man. And what do I mean by that? Well, there's always been opportunities to tell stories, to lie, to manipulate. Started out with, before we had books, we told stories, and these stories were usually passed down. But the problem is that stories can be manipulated. Well, then what we ended up doing is we created the ability to write in language, books. And so in that, we wrote down things that we saw and our history. However, in that time, the same thing happened. Then people started writing things in the books that fit their narrative. You know, you see a lot of this in, for instance, religion, where then people start to read from the books and then they take different interpretations of the books in order to make it fit their narrative. Then from books we went to television. And in television, they literally tell a vision of what they want you to think, see, believe about the world around you. And from there we went to computers, the internet, and now ultimately to telephones and smartphones, where you get information on the daily about anything and everything. And depending on where you choose to get your information from, the information a lot of times is curated information, curated to sources and stories to, again, fit narratives that most of the time benefit other people. You see, but when you begin to understand that that's exactly what's occurring, what happens then is you start to look at things from a different perspective. Well, what I mean by that is, you start to take things out of yourself and you move it more into a holistic view of the world. There is no left or right, there is no up or down. You try to view it from a more neutral perspective, one that doesn't involve, or it's more difficult to involve the ego in it. Why is that important? Well, because at some point you choose truth, and you choose to understand, learn, grow in truth. And when you choose to do that, you no longer care about what your truth is, you care about what the truth is. And if the truth goes against your belief system, then you open up to understanding and adopting the truth. You're not stuck on a point. It's not that you're more malleable, but not that you can be easily dissuaded from your truth. It's that you're willing to be open to the perspective of truth in order to better understand yourself and the world around you. The problem is everybody uses these things to their favor. I'm going to give you an example. I heard the other day that someone said that if you make $36,000 per year, you are actually in the top 1% of people, of earners in the entire world. Well, today, currently, I'm in the country of Chile. I'm in Santiago. And as you've seen behind me, all the buildings and such, Santiago doesn't look a whole lot different than a lot of other major cities across the world. I've actually, myself, been to about 40 countries. And the things you learn and understand when you take this journey is, using that number of 36,000 is a misleading number. Why is it misleading? If you earn that much, that's how much you earn. Okay. Well, we'll use the United States as a perfect example. If you make $36,000 in the United States, in the U.S., because of how much it costs to live, you're probably honestly below the poverty line. you're not making a lot of money. It's difficult to survive. You're going from day to day, but you're making more than the top 1% of the world. You see, this is just like real estate, location, location, location. It all counts. You see, many countries, the cost for certain things is much less than in the United States. Housing and food and all the things, much less expensive. Quality of life is beautiful. It's incredible. But see, the propaganda doesn't tell you that. The propaganda tells you that you go to these other countries, they aren't modern, they don't have the same technology, they don't have the same abilities, experiences, healthcare, and the truth is, again, it's propaganda. Why? It's meant to drive a narrative. It's an us versus them narrative. It's the narrative of nationality, the narrative of we're better than you, or we're above you. Well, that's all, when you understand ego, all ego. You see, that's not understanding the world around you in a more favorable manner. You see, the problem with this us versus them mentality is whenever there's an us versus them, that means that them somehow is wrong or below or bad, and the us is the amazing, loving saviors of the world. You see, we look back on history, you see this all over history. Okay, in South America, we're going through and we're seeing how the Spanish and the Portuguese came in. The Spanish conquered a lot of the lands here, and for them, they actually thought they were bringing salvation to savages. That's what they would tell you. But when we look back on history, we look at it much differently. At the time, they didn't think they were doing wrong. They thought they were on the righteous side. And, hey, they won, and they were able to push their religion and culture on these people, so God backed them, right? But really what backed them was technology. They had technology that the people of this of these regions didn't have. So the question you got to ask yourself is, how is that any different than today? Well, technology has started to level the playing field out, meaning that when you go to these countries, their technology is just as equal, in some cases even better than other locations. But you still look at news and media, and they will tell you that these locations, these places are developing countries. It used to be, we used to call them third world countries. Now they're developing countries. Developing economically is, I think, what they're essentially trying to push. The issue with that statement, though, is what are we developing into? You see, a lot of these locations and places that we're in, we sit here and we talk about concepts like slavery. Well, slavery has been around for the history and existence of all mankind. The problem is that people imagine through their ego that slavery disappeared. However, it didn't. It just transformed. It transformed from you're my servant and you'll do what I tell you to do, to I don't pay you enough money to survive, so you'll work for me and you'll take the pittance that I offer you, and you'll go day to day in survival mode to keep you caught in a perpetual state of ownership. And then we use things like statements such as, well, if you make $36,000, you're in the top 1% of the world. Because what it's meant to do is, just like the prison that, like New York City becomes, it's meant to keep you in a prison. It's meant to make you think you got it the best out of everybody else in the world, so why would you question it? Why would you leave? Why would you consider other things? Because you got it the best in the world. When in reality, you don't necessarily have it any different than anybody else. It's just an illusion. You see, as I walk down these steps, and hopefully in the background you've been able to see, and feel free to go back and just kind of look at the background as I walk, you'll see this is a big, modern, bustling city. No different than many other big, modern, bustling cities in the world. You see a mix of some older architecture, but then you also see a lot of mix of new architecture, modern architecture. You probably hear the big water fountain in the background. It's beautiful. So, understanding this, you start to understand how statements like that are meant to keep you trapped in a paradigm, are meant to keep you separate from others, are meant to keep you in a state of judgment, judging other countries, judging other people. It keeps you stuck in a nationalistic view, which is, again, we've talked about this. As an ego, you're easy to control. So if you're stuck in a nationalistic, egoic perspective, easy to create the us versus them. Just like being stuck in a religious paradigm, it's the same thing, us versus them. And the us versus them, that's when you know you're not connecting to source. That's when you know it's ego. But let's say you. How do you feel about that? Do you think that is what's your perspective on that statement? Do you understand why these statements are made and how they are a narrative that don't value you? How they're a narrative that are meant to keep you locked in a box? I'm curious. As always, if you enjoy this content, please like, share, and subscribe. I am truly grateful, and as I sign out, I'll sign out where it's a little louder so you can see the water fountain. And I will say peace, love, light. I hope you have the most amazing day.